Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody,
Shabbat Shalom, Judas.
and welcome to another celebration of creation. And why do I say that? Because the Lord created everything that there is in 6 days. And on the seventh day, he ceased from creation. And he hollowed out the seventh day, and he gave it as a commandment for all time. And what he did with Israel to remind them of this, because they were slaves in Egypt, and they were at the behest of the master, so they didn't celebrate Shabbat. So when they were released from Egypt, and they were in the wilderness, and God provided manna for them, and he gave them this lesson. He says, on 5 days, each day you collect manna for 5 days. And if you leave anything over the next day, it's going to spoil. So you have to keep going out and collecting manna. But on the sixth day, a miracle happened. On the sixth day, they collected twice as much as they would on other days, but it did not spoil on the seventh day. And so John is fond of saying,
The Sabbath day is on God.
because God provided miraculously. And I believe it's a lesson for us today that he again commanded this day be hallowed and celebrated from the beginning of creation. So this is nothing new. It was nothing new that he gave to Israel. It was a reminder that he gave to Israel to celebrate this day. And so we are doing as God commanded from the beginning in Genesis and the Torah, that we are celebrating, and we've set it aside. In Jewish homes and in synagogues, they prepare, they take all week preparing for this day, because on this day they set out special plates. They use the best silverware. They have many dishes, dishes meaning many servings, from appetizers to the main course to dessert. And this is done weekly. And the special bread, the challah, but one bread that we've been eating is the sourdough. They make the special bread just for this day to celebrate creation. And also in the synagogues, they have what they call is a Torah portion. The Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, is divided into 52 portions. And this week's parashah, a portion, is called Vayikra, and he called. And it's from Leviticus 1, verse 1 through 6, 7 I have on the sheet. But in my book, in my Torah, it's divided into, let's see, 5 portions. The first being from Leviticus 1 through 27. The Lord called to Moses the Olay burnt offering. The second part, the mincha, the meal offering, Leviticus 2, 1 through 16. The third, sacrifice of well-being, Leviticus 3, 13 through 17. The chatat, sin offering, Leviticus 4, 1 through 35. And the chatat sin offering, asham, Leviticus 5, 1 through 26. And it begins, and I think I'm going to get my other Torah so it has a little bit bigger font, because I don't know where my reading glasses are. And so I'm going to use the bigger font here and start out reading. Vayikra. Okay, good. Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe, וידבר אדוני אליו מאוהל מועד לאמור. דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת אל אלוהים, אדם כי יקריב מכם קרבן לאדוני מן בחמה, מן הבקר ומן הצאן, תקרבו את קרבכם. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the Israelites people and say to them, when any of you presents an offering of cattle to the Lord, he shall choose his offering from the herd or from the flock. John?
Psalm 114. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, Judah was his sanctuary, and Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled. Jordan was driven back. The mountains skipped like rams, and the little hill like lambs. What aileth thee, O thy sea, that thou fleetest? Thou Jordan, that thou was driven back. Ye mountains, that ye skip like rams, and ye little hills like lambs. Tremble, thou earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, which turns the rock into a standing water, the flint into a fountain of water. This is the word of the Lord. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. May your kingdom come, and may your will be done. We give thanks to you, Lord God, for you have brought us to and into another Shabbat, a time to rest and to acknowledge the God who has created us and preserved us. And we give you thanks, Lord, through prayer and worship and action and study and song. And with glad hearts, Lord, we give thanks for your great mercy towards us. For you, Lord, have delivered us through Christ Jesus, delivered us from the penalty of sin and death. For he has paid this debt for us, and we are grateful and thankful for what he has done. And we celebrate with our brethren the Jews, Lord, whom you brought out of the house of bondage, out of Egypt, on your strong arm, and command them also that they should rest on this day, to acknowledge the God who has created the universe and who has created them, and deliver them as he has promised. And they celebrate and give thanks and worship and praise, and with glad hearts rejoice in the great mercy of God. And we both, Lord, celebrate this day and rest in you. And we invite you, Lord, into our dwelling, the dwelling that you have provided for us and given to us. For we know that one day you will draw us close and invite us to a dwelling that you have made for us without the hands of man, that we may be united with you forever and ever, to give thanks and praise and joy. And until Messiah comes again, we give thanks to you. And for the Spirit that remains with us, we give thanks. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min sawar. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us bread from the earth. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam barei pri hagafen. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the fruit of the vine. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Judith.
Welcome to the celebration of the creation of the universe and all that there is in it. We celebrate that because God has commanded that we do so. And so we start out with the first section in my Torah, which I like it when they give us small sections here so we can comment on it. And this is the Olah, burnt offering from Leviticus 1 through 117. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when any of you presents an offering of cattle to the Lord, he shall choose his offering from the herd or from the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall make his offering a male without blemish. He shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting for acceptance in his behalf before the Lord. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, that it may be acceptable in his behalf, an expiation for him. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall offer the blood, dashing the blood against all sides of the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The burnt offering shall be flayed and cut up into sections. The sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar, and lay out wood upon the fire. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall lay out the sections with the head and the suet on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. Its entrails and legs shall be washed with water, and the priest shall turn the whole into smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord. If his offering for a burnt offering is from the flock of sheep or goats, he shall make his offering a male without blemish. It shall be slaughtered before the Lord on the north side of the altar, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. When it has been cut up into sections, the priest shall lay them out with the head and the suet on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. The entrails and the legs shall be washed with water. The priest shall offer up and turn the whole into smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord. If his offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, he shall choose his offering from turtle doves or pigeons. The priest shall bring it to the altar, pinch off its head, and turn it into smoke on the altar, and its blood shall be drained out against the side of the altar. He shall remove its crop with its contents, and cast it into the place of the ashes as the east side of the altar. The priest shall tear it open by its wings without severing it, and turn it into smoke on the altar upon the wood that is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord.
Okay. One thing comes out, and on the interesting side, one of the notes I wrote from previous years, it said, well, at the beginning it says, and the Lord said unto Moses, and spake to him out of the tabernacle of the congregation of the people. So Moses is back with the people, and God gives him this command. And you say, well, wait a minute. Wasn't Moses on the mountain for 40 days, 40 nights, and he got the 10 commandments? Why didn't God just throw this in while he was there? It would make sense. But this is to show, and this is the comment I wrote, that the where did I write it? Let's see. I did write the offerings were designed to help man.
Mm-hmm.
The goal for man is to become a man to elevate himself above the above animal nature. But I don't think that answers the question as why. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. The offerings were told to Moses at the tent of meetings, while the temple design was given. While the temple design was given on Mount Sinai, why not also tell him of the offerings on Mount Sinai? It said the offerings are rooted in this world to elevate it, while the temple is rooted in the heavens. So the offerings are based in this world, while the creation of the temple is elevated in the heavenly world. So that's why offerings, are based on living in this world, while the temple is rooted in the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the new heavens and new earth are created, they come from heaven. They don't really
come from earth. That's right.
Right. And our offerings at that time won't be rooted in earth, but they will. The sacrifices then will be sacrifice of Thanksgiving, that kind of thing. Not even animal sacrifice anymore.
Mm.
But I think that's interesting because to show that offerings are rooted in this world, the temple is rooted in the next world.
Mm.
Burnt offerings, I think there was maybe 3, but the first offering that was given. Now, actually, who's going to give a bull as an offering? A rich man or a poor man?
A rich one.
It's going to be a rich man. Poor man is going to have a bull to give an offering. If he had a bull, he wouldn't be a poor man. So, but the burnt offerings are designed to be completely and 100% consumed. They don't eat them.
Mm-hmm.
It is the idea of 100% devoted to God. The Jewish people didn't get a part of it. The priests didn't get a part of it. It's completely devotion to God, and it was totally consumed. They did go through some of the process of how you would treat the parts and wash the parts. But what does a poor man give? This doesn't specify. We learn that in other places. What does the poor man give? The poor man gives a turtle dove, because that's what he's got. He doesn't have anything else. He gives a turtle dove or young pigeon. And this is kind of interesting. With the cattle, they do cuts on the cattle. They take a knife, cut its throat, take the blood, drip it out, let it drain out into a pan, and they dash it. Very time consuming. I mean, rich people got time, I guess, but very time consuming. They don't rush it, but when the poor man brings his turtle dove, what does the priest do? Just wrings off the neck.
Mm-hmm. Pinches off the neck.
Pinches off the neck. Don't even worry about getting a knife. Why don't you get a knife and cut the pigeon's neck? Nope, don't do that. Wrings it off. the idea of the thinking here is that the poor man, well, all he can bring is a turtle dove. And if the priest had to get a knife, he'd have to wait. And the guy feels bad already giving the turtle dove. And then has to wait for certain things to happen. So instead of having the guy wait and feel bad about giving this turtle dove, what do? They just wring off the neck real quick. No waiting around. And I thought that was somewhat interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What is the idea of the offerings? Well, a couple of ideas going on, but I think one of the ideas is to elevate us above the level of animals. At one time, animals were at the same level of human beings, and at one time even higher than the level of human beings. And this is why some say God allowed men to start eating animals. Certain animals will never rise to that level of equality with man, or even a level or two above man. But these are the two things I wanted to mention about the offerings themselves. I think they'll talk about more of them later, but this is a guilt offering, and I think this offering is one of those, it seems like it's mandatory. Doesn't seem like one offering, but if you want to do it, you can do it, or not. But this is this doesn't seem like it's mandatory from the way it's written. If any man of you bring, oh well, this may be mandatory because it doesn't say free will or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be mandatory. Oh, it does say voluntary later on. But that's all I have for now.
The second part is entitled the Mincha, meal offering, Leviticus 2, 1 through 16. When a person presents an offering of meal to the Lord, his offering shall be of choice flour. He shall pour oil upon it, lay frankincense on it, and present it to Aaron's sons, the priest. The priest shall scoop out of it a handful of its choice flour and oil, as well as all of its frankincense, and this token portion he shall turn into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. And the remainder of the meal offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, a most holy portion from the Lord's offering by fire. When you present an offering of meal baked in the oven, it shall be of choice flour, unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a meal offering on a griddle, it shall be of choice flour with oil mixed in, unleavened. Break it into bits and pour oil on it, and it shall mend. It is a meal offering. If your offering is a meal offering in a pan, it shall be made of choice flour and oil. When you present to the Lord a meal offering that is made in any of these ways, it shall be brought to the priest, who shall take it up to the altar. The priest shall remove the token portion from the meal offering and turn it into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to the Lord. And the remainder of the meal offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, a most holy portion from the Lord's offering by fire. No meal offering that you offer to the Lord shall be made with leaven, for you must not turn the smoke into smoke, any leaven or any honey or any offering by fire to the Lord. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering or a choice product, but they shall not be offered up on the altar for a pleasing odor. You shall season every offering of meal with salt. You shall not omit from your meal offering the salt of your covenant with God. With all of your offerings you must offer salt. If you bring a meal offering of first fruits to the Lord, you shall bring grain in season, parched with fire, grits of the fresh ear, as your meal offering of first fruits. You shall add the oil to it, and lay frankincense on it. It is a meal offering, and the priest shall turn a token portion of it into smoke. Some of the grits in oil, with all of the frankincense, as an offering by fire to the Lord.
Oh, okay. This is talking about the meal offering, and I think it's still talking about the type of offering that a poor man would bring. Poor folks can't bring cattle and sheep and that kind of a thing, so they bring fine flour and that kind of thing for the meal offering. And the thing that catches me, caught my eye, was the salt offering. And I guess in every Jewish table there's always salt. And salt has always played a role in human history. Even not, I'm tempted to say not as much now as in history, but that wouldn't be true. The only difference is it's not as expensive now as it was then. We still use salt for preservatives.
Yes.
It's everywhere. We even just salt our roads with it.
Yes.
It's in all of our foods. It's everywhere. They still use it for healing purposes and for medical reasons.
Yes.
It's just as important, just as valuable as it was then. The only thing I can think of between then and now is, well, two things. It's available to a lot more people and it's not as expensive. So what is this idea of salt? Salt is a preservative, and some say that salt is constant. It doesn't lose its flavor or anything. Doesn't assuming you don't dilute it in water or something like that. But salt is indestructible. It's solid, and we get it mostly from water. Well, we may grab it from the earth, but
You find it in the earth.
yeah, it's in the earth and also in the water. It's a lot. Its composition is also water, so it's both solid and liquid form. And the idea of salt, one of the teachers teach that salt can be known to burn. I don't think burn like fire, but if you put salt on certain objects, it would burn right through it. And also with that idea of salt burning things, it's also mostly water. So what are the two? Those are the two extremes: fire and water. And what does that teach us? There's some teachers said that God is in the extremes as well. He's in control of the normal stuff, and he's in control of the extreme stuff from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is to demonstrate. And we're to remember that God is not just the God of everything. God is the God of the extreme as well. But one other thing, I'm having some trouble trying to reconcile it, but salt doesn't lose its flavor. Now, we are to, another lesson you can draw from that is that salt makes things
Irritates. Irritates.
Well, it irritates, makes things feel better. But yeah, we're to make people uncomfortable.
Yes.
We talk about God.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we are to present the word where it's palatable, they can understand it, and they want to learn about God. But yeah, it's an irritant as well, and it's also pleasing to some.
So Yeshua said if salt loses its savor, what good is it?
Right. But salt can't lose its flavor.
Well, I guess he was talking about that if we aren't irritating people, we've lost our savor.
I guess, okay, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, which means, but also, we would have lost our effectiveness if we were not irritating.
Yeah.
But if we're the salt, that won't happen. So there's no reason to question yourself, wow, am I doing what's right? No, you just keep doing what you're doing, and that's the right thing to do, as long as you're not sinning or anything like that. Just keep doing what you're doing. But I think that's all I have for that so far, is that the salt never loses its effectiveness.
But again, Yeshua he says to the believer, if you're not effective, if salt loses its flavor, then what good are you?
Okay.
Meaning, if we're not irritating, being an irritant, then we are not effective. We're not salt in so many words. We've lost whatever that particle that causes salt to be an irritant.
Okay.
In terms of our spiritual life, we are not presenting the word as Christ did, because if we are presenting it as he did, we're going to be an irritant. The world is not going to like us.
That may be true, but you're saying it's possible to lose your.
I'm saying Yeshua said that, because Yeshua said it in.
Yes.
He says if the salt.
Okay. Okay. What does he say again?
Hold on. I'll find it for you.
Okay. There's one key word I'm going to latch on to. And you said it, and I think it's the very first word.
It's in Matthew.
Okay.
Okay, Matthew 5:13-14.
Okay.
Yeshua says, "You are the salt of the earth.
Okay.
But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned?
Okay.
It is then good for nothing,
Okay.
but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by man. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." So this is Yeshua. I'm not the one saying this. He's saying if you and I'm.
He says what again?
If you lose. If it loses. If okay.
Yeah.
And if you said if, it's possible for it to lose its flavor.
It's possible for it not to as well.
And it's possible for it to do so.
Well,
how shall it be seasoned if then good for nothing?
Positive. Okay.
Go for the positive, but he's saying
if
you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
But that can't happen.
Yes, it can. If you could not be doing what the Lord wants you to do.
There's two ways of looking at it.
There certainly are.
It's possible.
Yes.
But it's not possible.
Okay. So it's possible. No. It's possible and it's not possible. Okay.
I hear.
And you hedge toward it's not possible for it.
Right.
I said it's possible for us to lose its flavor. That's what.
Okay.
Okay.
But that big if is the key.
Okay. All right. All right. The next is sacrifice of well-being. Leviticus 3:1 through. Oh, did I mess up? Are we on the third part?
Yeah, third.
Leviticus 3:1 through 17. If an offering is a sacrifice of well-being, and if it offers of the herd, whether a male or female, he shall bring before the Lord one without blemish. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall dash the blood against the sides of the altar. He shall then present from the sacrifice of well-being as an offering by fire to the Lord the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which he shall remove with kidneys. Aaron's son shall turn these into smoke on the altar with the burnt offering which is upon the wood that is on the fire, as an offering by fire of pleasing odor to the Lord. And if his offering for a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord is from the flock, whether a male or female, he shall offer one without blemish. If he presents a sheep as his offering, he shall bring it before the Lord, and lay his hand upon the head of his offering. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of the meeting, and Aaron's son shall dash its blood upon all sides of the altar. He shall then present as an offering by fire to the Lord the fat from the sacrifice of well-being, the whole broad tail, which shall be removed close to the backbone, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as food, an offering by fire to the Lord. And if his offering is a goat, he shall bring it before the Lord, and lay his hand upon its head. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's son shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. He shall then present as an offering from it, as an offering by fire to the Lord, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and at the protuberance on the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as food, an offering by fire of pleasing odor. All fat is the Lord's. It is a law for all time throughout the ages. In all your settlements you must not eat any fat or any blood.
Okay, this is, I guess this is another type of offering, a peace offering, but this is the voluntary offering. Not for any particular sin, maybe something you should have done but you failed to do, or could have done but failed to do. And this could be either a male animal or a female animal. And not like the other, not like the burnt offering. The burnt offering is just male. The peace offerings are not mandatory offerings. And did I say anything else about those? But I don't think it's mentioned it. But for all these offerings, these are for involuntary actions or involuntary sins, not something that you deliberately did. There is no offering you can make to atone for willful sin. These are all involuntary sins, actions that you could have done or should have done but didn't do. Completely inadvertent sins, not deliberate sins. But that's all I have for that.
Okay. The next part is called Chatat, sin offering, from Leviticus 4:1-35. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus: when a person unwittingly incurs guilt in regard to any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does one of them, if it is the anointed priest who has incurred guilt, so that the blame falls upon the people, he shall offer for the sin of which he is guilty a bull of the herd without blemish, as a sin offering to the Lord. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, and lay his hand upon the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord, and the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle the blood 7 times before the Lord, in front of the curtain of the shrine. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of aromatic incense, which is in the tent of meeting, before the Lord, and all the rest of the bull's blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as it is removed from the ox of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke on the altar of burnt offering. But the hide of the bull and all its flesh, as well as its head and legs, its entrails and its dung, and all the rest of the bull, he shall carry to a clean place outside the camp, to the ash heap, and burn it up with wood. It shall be burnt on the ash heap. And if the whole community of Israel that has erred, and the matter escapes the notice of the congregation, so that they do any of the things which by the Lord's commandments ought not be done, and thus find themselves culpable, when the sin through which they increase guilt becomes known, the congregation shall offer a bull of the herd as a sin offering, and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the community shall lay their hands upon the head of the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. Excuse me, please. The anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain. Some of the blood he shall put on the horns of the altar which is before the Lord in the tent of meeting, and all the rest of the blood shall pour out on the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all of its fat from it, and turn it into smoke on the altar. He shall do with the bull just as it's done, and the priest's bull of a sin offering he shall do the same with it. Thus the priest shall make expiation for them, and they shall be forgiven. He shall carry the bull outside the camp, and burn it as he burnt the first bull. It is the sin offering of the congregation. In case it is a chieftain who incurs guilt by doing unwittingly any of the things which by any of the commandment of the Lord his God ought not to be done, and finds himself culpable, once the sin of which he is guilty is brought to his knowledge, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay his hand upon the goat's head, and it shall be slaughtered at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a sin offering. The priest shall take with his finger some of the blood of the sin offering, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and the rest of its blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering. All its fat he shall turn into smoke on the altar, like the fat of the sacrifice of well-being. Thus the priest shall make expiation on his behalf for his sin, and he shall be forgiven. If any person from among the populace unwittingly incurs guilt by doing any of these things, which by the Lord's commandments ought not be done, and finds himself culpable, once the sin of which he is guilty is brought to his knowledge, he shall bring a female goat without blemish as his offering for the sin of which he is guilty. He shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and the sin offering shall be slaughtered at its place of the sin offering. The priest shall take with his finger some of the blood, and put it on the horn of the altar at burnt offering, and all the rest of the blood he shall pour out as a base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, just as the fat is removed from the sacrifice of well-being, and the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar for a pleasing odor to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make expiation for him, and he shall be forgiven. If the offering he brings as a sin offering is a sheep, he shall bring a female without blemish. He shall lay upon his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and it shall be slaughtered as a sin offering at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest shall take with his finger some of the blood of the sin offering, and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and all the rest of its blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar, and all its fat he shall remove, just as the fat of the sheep of the sacrifice of well-being is removed, and thus the priest shall turn into smoke on the altar over the Lord's offering by fire. Thus the priest shall make expiation on his behalf for the sin of which he is guilty, and he shall be forgiven.
Oh, okay. Now this one is kind of interesting. I didn't realize it until now. But this is for, well, there are two types of sins. There's individual sin, and then there's community sin. Now, our sin, when we sin, it not only affects ourselves, but it affects the community too. So, how do you, and you can do it ignorantly, you may not be deliberate. So these are unintentional sins done by an individual where it affects the entire community, and the entire community has to um, be forgiven of that sin. And this offering is burnt, but it's not burnt on the altar. It's not burnt inside the camp. It's burnt outside the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the part I didn't realize. The sin offerings. Most of them are done on the altar inside the camp, but this one, along with the red heifer, that one's done outside the camp. And I don't know if this one is pointing to the red heifer or not, but kind of alluding to it. Well, maybe even more so, because the red heifer has to do with cleansing the people for what the community had done at the golden calf. So this one is interesting. It has to do with the community being involved and this community having to be exonerated or forgiven for that sin, which is kind of interesting. And as I said, it happened outside the camp. Was there something else I underlined, I think? No, it's still a sin through ignorance. The priest must be atoned for it. That's the community involvement. Don't ever think that my sin only affects me, but the sin affects the community as well. And that has to be dealt with as well. Okay. Even if you know it or if you don't know it and they bring it to your attention, it still has to be addressed. But I think that's it. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, yep.
And the last part is chatat, sin offering, asham, guilt offering. And that's Leviticus 5, 1 through 26. If a person incurs guilt when he has heard a public imprecation, and although able to testify as one who has either seen or learned of the matter, he does not give information so that he is subject to punishment. Or when a person touches any unclean thing, be it the carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of an unclean cattle, or the carcass of an unclean creeping thing, and the fact has escaped him, and then being unclean he finds himself culpable. Or when he touches human uncleanness, any such uncleanness whereby one becomes unclean, and though he has known it, the fact has escaped him, but later he finds himself culpable. Or when a person utters an oath to bad or good purpose, whatever a man may utter in an oath, and though he has known it, the fact has escaped him, but later he finds himself culpable in any of those matters. And when he realizes his guilt in any of these matters, he shall confess that wherein he has sinned, and he shall bring as his penalty to the Lord for the sin of which he is guilty a female from the flock, sheep or goat, as a sin offering, and the priest shall make expiation on his behalf for his sin. But if his means do not suffice for a sheep, he shall bring to the Lord as his penalty for that of which he is guilty 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer first the one from the sin offering, pinching its head at the snake without severing it. He shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and what remains of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. And the second he shall prepare as a burnt offering according to regulation. Thus the priest shall make expiation on his behalf for the sin of which he is guilty, and he shall be forgiven. Excuse me. And if his means do not suffice for 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, he shall bring as his offering for that of which lied guilty 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour for a sin offering. He shall not add oil to it or lay frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. He shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall scoop out of it a handful as a token portion of it, and turn it into smoke on the altar. But the Lord's offering by fire, it is a sin offering. Thus the priest shall make expiation on his behalf for whichever of these sins he is guilty, and he shall be forgiven. It shall belong to the priest, like the meal offering. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when a person commits a trespass, being unwittingly remiss about any of the Lord's sacred things, he shall bring as his penalty to the Lord a ram without blemish from the flock, convertible into payment in silver by the sanctuary weight as a guilt offering. He shall make restitution for that wherein he was remiss about the sacred things, and he shall add a 5th part to it, and give it to the priest. The priest shall make expiation on his behalf with the ram of guilt offering, and he shall be forgiven. And when a person without knowing it sins in regards to any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and then realizes his guilt, he shall be subject to punishment. He shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock, or the equivalent, as a guilt offering. The priest shall make expiation on his behalf for the error that he committed unwittingly, and he shall be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He has incurred guilt before the Lord. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when a person sins and commits a trespass, the Lord, by dealing deceitfully with his fellow in the matter of a deposit or a pledge, or through robbery, or by defrauding his fellow, or by finding something lost and lying about it, if he swears falsely regarding any of the various things that one may do, and sin thereby, when one has thus sinned and realized his guilt, would restore that which he got through robbery or fraud, or the deposit that was entrusted to him, a lost thing that he found, or anything else about which he swore falsely, he shall repay the principal amount and add a 5th part to it. He shall pay it to the owner when he realizes his guilt. Then he shall bring to the priest as his penalty to the Lord a ram without blemish from the flock, or the equivalent, as a guilt offering. The priest shall make expiation on his behalf before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven for whatever he may have done to draw blame thereby.
Okay, this is still the offerings, and one other thing I mentioned that didn't mention before. When we commit sins, it has to cost us something. You know, you just can't commit sins with no consequences, but it has to follow. It must cost us something, followed by some type of action. And this is the offerings that's required. Also mixed in here is they talk about the turtle doves again, and also there's some people who are so poor they can't even afford turtle doves. So what do? They can present flour, but this time you don't mix it with oil, and I forgot the rationale behind that. So previous time they flour or meal. you can mix frankincense in it, but sometimes you mix frankincense. This does say fine flour, but this is for the extreme poor person who's committed a sin. No one's exempt from sinning. Everybody sins. The rich and the poor, and the means for reconciling or the means for dealing with it. The offerings are different. So there's levels of what we have to do to be forgiven. I'm sure this fine flour is the equivalent of a ram to this other guy, to the rich guy, but this is the various levels of requirement for sin offerings. Did I make another point? But there's still a lot of things that could go wrong, a lot of sins we could do, and a lot of detail on how it should be handled. Still more detail here than than it took during creating a place for man. A lot of detail. Offerings can still be female, and some compare that, male and female to man and woman and that type of offering, or characterization. But I can't remember the difference. But I know they say, men and women are like fire and water, where women are fire and men are mostly water. That's what the offerings look like. The offerings take the form of male and female. The poor is not exempt, and you can't exact more from the rich, even though they may have a lot more. And you could, hey, now you gotta have 10 sheep as opposed to just one. So, but this is what this is all about. It's the idea of reconciling and drawing closer to God, and to acknowledging our sins. But that's all I have for this.
Well, that ends the Torah portion for this week.
Okay.
And we know that God is intent on giving instructions as how he is to be worshipped. That's the simple of it, and that's what he's giving instructions. The Torah portion for the next week is Sab, which is command, and it's from Leviticus 6:1 through 8:36, and it reads, "Vayidבר Adonai el Moshe lamor, Sab et ha'aron ve'et benav lamor zot Torat ha'olah, hu ha'olah al midat al mizbeach kol halayla ad haboker ve'esh hamizbeach tevachad bo." The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command Aaron and his sons thus: This is the ritual of the burnt offering. The burnt offering itself shall remain where it is, burnt upon the altar all night and morning until morning, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it." Okay. Great. So, when I was, just before we started our lessons, a song came up that we used to sing after communion, and this is basically what we've done at communion. We've had the bread and the wine. It symbolizes Yeshua and his death and suffering. And so it's an old hymn, and I'll start out with the chorus and maybe come up with a verse or two, but we'll sing the chorus a couple of times, and you will know what it is. I think you all should have sung it during your communion, after your communion. Drinking of the wine, 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 drinking of the wine, oh my Lord. Oh, the
have been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine.
One more time.
Drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the wine, oh my Lord. Would have been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine.
Two white horses side by side. One of them horses I'm gonna ride. Drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the wine. Drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the wine, oh my Lord. Ought to have been there 10,000 years. Drinking of the wine. This is one of them. If you get there before I do, tell my mother I'm coming too. Ought to have been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine. And of course, drinking of the wine, wine, wine. Drinking of the wine, oh my Lord. Ought to have been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine. Oh, hymnal that we used to sing right after communion. We thank the Lord for this celebration of creation. Excuse me. That He has allowed us to partake in yet another week. Yet another the 6 days where we have labored and we have created for 6 days, and on this 7th day we are ceased from creation. And so we thank the Lord for this time that He's going to be with us and teach us things that we need to carry into the next week. So we're thankful, we're grateful, and we say
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Tov.
Shabbat Shalom, and have a good week. Whole world is waiting.
Sing the song of Shabbat. Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat.
Whole world is
Waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat. Whole world is waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat. I'm also waiting. Waiting to sing the song of. I'm also waiting. Sing the song of Shabbat.